Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
Welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Student Body Right USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. You might see another logo in the screen now. It's the first time we've had somebody from an opposing team on the show, but we had to because Utah Utes are just a good team. They're a really good team, good quarterback, can make plays. Obviously, this is the first time USC has entered a game as the underdog this week. So Lincoln Riley can play that card this week, right? He can just tell him, no one thinks we can win in Utah. JT Wistrchill, is that
Wistrchill? It's Wistrchill. Many a substitute teachers have fallen victim to that one.
Wistrchill. Where can they find you? I know you covered the Utes. Where can they find you, and where are you podcasting out of?
Yeah, just head over to my Twitter account, JT Wistrchill on Twitter, host of the Locked On Utes podcast. So you can follow us at Locked On Utes as well, covering the Utes Monday through Friday, and a ton content covering this big game Saturday, because as we were talking about before we jumped on, Dwayne, we've been talking about this one forever.
Forever, yeah. As soon as Lincoln Riley made his entrance into the Pac-12, we said, okay, can they beat Utah? So I want to start with that part of it. Is when did Utah become Utah? Because the Pac-12 has always been UCLA, USC, maybe a little bit of Oregon State, but Oregon, those teams, Washington was sprinkling a little bit here and there. But when did you been following this team for a while? When have you seen that kind of turn where people are like, oh, Utah's on the schedule, you better be careful?
I think it really happened in the last couple of years, because you look at it, coming to the conference for a while, you're just getting some upsets and just a good team, but can never really make a name for yourself. And then you start to win the South, make to the Pac-12 championship game. But even then, so you're starting to be taken more seriously. Then you're a ranked team a lot of the years as well, but just never won the Pac-12. And then finally last year, winning the Pac-12 was huge for this team. Feels like it really changed the national perception. Came into the year as the 6th ranked team in the AP poll. Some AP writers had them as high as 4, I saw, because there's a pretty consensus top 3. So even being that high was really good. So it's been a process for this Utah team. Kyle Whittingham, the second longest tenured head coach in college football, basically. So he's been building this program for a long time, has a really good staff amongst him. The culture is great out here in Utah as well. That's something this group really prides themselves on. They do not have the recruiting classes of the USCs or a lot of these other schools, but they really recruit players that they know they can work with, and their player development is also phenomenal. So it's really helped them grow and just transform this Utah program into one of the best in the country.
And on this channel, we do USC football. We also do Raider football. So is that mix? And then we also talk about the draft and stuff like that. So for me, just looking at draft prospects, I just kept on seeing like people from Utah. I'm like, oh, this guy's getting drafted. This guy's in the first round, second round, third round. They're filling up draft boards now. So that's when I kind of see. But besides the X's and O's and the winning games, that's when I really see that this team is really taking heed to that. So Kyle Whittingham. So like, did he? I couldn't find the exact quote, but does he have a issue with Lincoln Riley and the NIL and the transfer portal? Did he make a comment? Somebody said he made comments about that. I couldn't find the quote about it. If you didn't see the quote, that's fine. But what are your thoughts about NIL future and as far as the transfer portal future as well?
Yeah, Coach Whittingham said he hadn't really had much interaction with Lincoln overall. They've been in a couple of meetings together like that, but he said he thinks he's a phenomenal coach. And how can you not think Lincoln Riley is a phenomenal coach, right? The results speak for themselves at OU, and then even through his USC tenure just to start, right? I think it's really hard to be undefeated 6 games into the season, and that's
in your first year.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what the Trojans have been able to do. So you give all the credit to him, and Coach Whittingham has as well. I think he's made a couple comments just in general about. I think he feels like a lot of coaches do about NIL. I think he does. They want to see the student athletes get paid, and they're happy those guys are kind of getting recognized and getting some of the things they're owed. But at the same time, right now there's just issues kind of regulating it. So there's lots of stuff going on that people don't know about. So I think he's just made comments about that, but honestly, I don't think there's been nothing huge shattering like that. Nothing
Okay.
like he's saying he hasn't disrespected this USC program. He's been singing their praises. I mean, he understands what a
Yeah.
challenge it is going to this game as well. And just the whole NIL conversation it's a fascinating one for where college sports is heading one day. But I mean, the way I view it at the end of the day is these athletes do so much and they deserve to get paid. I mean, so many of these programs are always going to get support from their fans, but there are genuinely certain players as well that put bodies in seats, like a Caleb Williams, like a Jordan
Yeah.
Addison. So those guys deserve to be compensated. And I'm glad that's the point we're at in college athletics, where these guys can benefit off their name, image, and likeness.
They should. I think at this point we gotta kind of, not making money when the whole stadium had your jersey on. That's kind of like, you gotta, you gotta give them something. So this is one of the last times we get the USC is playing Utah. Has been in UCLA, USC going to the Big Ten. Is there any? I mean, the Pac-12 is not really, I would say, not run great. The Pac-12 network did not do a good job, especially when all the storylines they had with their network, and they didn't even give the media day. It wasn't live on TV, which was horrible. What are your thoughts about Utah? Are they going to be staying in the Pac-12, or do you think they may move or try to get somewhere? Because they are a good program, and kids obviously like where the direction of where this this program is going.
Yeah, Utah as a school itself is not one of the biggest schools in the country, of course, but they are good at football, and that's what drives all of this. Is there's so much money in football and college athletics. I mean, basketball as well, but hey, Utah is not a basketball school right now by any means, so we'll keep it focused on football. So this Utah team, because they are a really strong football program, I do expect them to be involved in the future of college athletics. And what I mean by that is, I think Utah is going to be in the Pac-12 for the next couple of years. There's a lot of people have talked about there's going to be 2 super conferences in the future. That's personally where I believe it's heading.
Yeah.
Some formation of whether it's one side's called the SEC, one side's called the Big Ten. Those are the 2 main conferences that are going to stay. But I think they're going to change names. I just think we're heading for a radical change. But I don't see Utah leaving for the Big 12 per se. I don't see the Big 10 wanting to scoop them up, at least at the moment. So I do see Utah kind of, once the whole thing breaks down, basically, as in all right, once the Alabamas, the Ohio States, they leave the NCAA, then that's when I see Utah kind of going in and joining one of those super conferences, because I do think you're going to want a team in the Utes in a super conference, because they're a really good football team. And at the end of the day, that's what you want, is you want to have the best teams playing each other. And for the past few years, Utah's been amongst the best programs. They've been consistently ranked in the top 20 as well. They're bringing in a ton of recruiting classes. Their recruiting classes are actually better than they've ever been before. And they've already been competing for Pac-12 championships. So they should continue to be able to do that. So it's going to be fun to see what the future is. Like I said, personally, I think they will stay with the Pac-12 for the next couple of years. But then once everything just gets blown up, that's when I think we'll see them go to the super conferences. Some people say they're going back to the Mountain West. Look, when you're coming off a season in which you won a Pac-12 championship, I don't think that's going to be the case.
No, we don't. I don't think the Utes should be downgrading. You don't downgrade. You don't downgrade. So, what's the path to victory here for the Utes? I mean, I watch the Utes. I'm sure you've seen SC play. Mm-hmm. The one thing, I mean, running the football is going to be at a premium in this game. Both teams like to run the football. What are your thoughts about how are they going to attack USC this weekend?
You mentioned it, running the ball. I think that's the biggest thing, because I think you look at this Utah team and they haven't gotten the run going as much as they wanted to recently. Now, Tavion Thomas had the best game he's had in a couple of weeks versus UCLA. So I think in terms of, this Utah team, the first thing they want to do going into a game is establish the run. And especially in this game, when you can establish and run the ball effectively, you can keep the other side's offense off the field. And I think that's exactly what Kyle Whittingham and this group wants to do. Coach Andy Ludwig, I think, is going to be using the run a lot in this one, because Caleb Williams, all those guys, that's just hard to stop for an entire game. There's a reason that very few teams have been able to do it on the season. So I really expect the Utes to try to run the ball, control the line of scrimmage, and see if they can grind out those possessions. Because honestly, this Utah defense, I mean, they just got drubbed by UCLA. They gave up 42 points in that one. And I think this is a Utah defense as well that I'm really concerned with going against some of the top playmakers on USC. So if Utah doesn't win the time of possession in this game, to me, they will lose the game, because that means the Trojans are running it really effectively. And that means Williams is getting it done through the air as well, which is just a bad sign for everyone who's a Utah fan.
Plans for blocking Tuli Polu, because he leads the nation in sacks. he's every game he just gets better and better.
Mm-hmm.
He's rising up draft boards. Is that a concern when Rising goes back to pass? They move him around a lot too. You don't want him in his face or on the blind side. What do you think their plans are for kind of that stopping that USC pass rush?
Yeah, and this is a Utah offensive line that's still kind of finding their footing. Just last week, they ended up swapping out their right guard a couple, I believe, as just at some point in the game because he just wasn't getting it done, unfortunately. So, and then you look at the right tackle spot for the Utes, it's been the weakest point of the season because they ended up kicking their right guard from last year out to tackle. And it just hasn't been something that's really worked. He's a guard. He's not a tackle. His name's Satawa Laumea. I expect the Trojans to really try to attack that right side of Utah's offensive line. Because on the left side, the blind side, you have Braden Daniels. And Daniels hasn't given up a sack really on the season. He's been really good over there. And you can beat him, especially with some of the talents that you were talking about amongst this USC team that does lead college football in sacks at the moment. So, but I would really attack that right side, whether it's bringing different blitzes or just letting your guys go to work. I really think that right side of the offensive line can be had. And if this Utah team gets in 3rd and long consistently, I think they could be in trouble because while Cam has done a really good job getting the ball out of there, if pressure's getting back there really quick, there's nothing you can do on those 3rd and long situations because it just takes time for those routes to develop. So it's going to be really, really critical for the Utes not to get behind the sticks.
So Kincaid's the tight end, right?
Yeah, Dalton.
So USC got lucky the first time they had to face a big tight end, and Oregon. I think Musgrave was out that game. Obviously, they don't get lucky this time. Kincaid can play. Can you talk about what he can bring, kind of controlling that middle of the field, and what will the playmakers? So who's the big playmakers on the outside for some Trojan fans who might not know?
Yeah, and I'll even mention this in a way, you and everyone else who plays the Utes going forward have gotten lucky because Brant Keithy, the guy who's led Utah in yards just amongst all pass catchers, he's another tight end. He's out for this game and out for the season. So he's a guy that this Utah team really misses, especially because the guy who's come in for him, Thomas Yasmin, went out last week and he had a deep ball and he just totally dropped it. And that's the kind of catch Keithy and Kincaid make if they're in that position. But like I said, so Keithy out, Kincaid in. Dalton, look, he's one of those guys. He is extremely tough. He takes contact like a champ, is able to bring down those tough catches over the middle. He's fearless. He's a little shifty as well, can get it done, can create separation on the outside. He's one of the higher tight end draft prospects as well going into the NFL draft. So Dalton's a guy who can provide a lot of problems. Cam really trusts him as well, whether it is looking deep. He's an athletic guy as well. He had a really impressive hurdle earlier in the year versus Southern Utah Southern Utah's not the best competition, but you don't see guys as big as Dalton Kincaid just hurdling over people. So really got to watch for him in the slot as well on the outside. And the big receiver for Utah you have to keep an eye on is Devon Vele. Him and Cam have really been coming along. The receiver position is not something that's been a big factor in the Utah's offense the past couple of years, but Devon Vele has really started to break out these last couple of games, gone over 80 yards in 3 games straight, and he's someone Utah wants to target even more on the outside. So I expect them to continue to look Vele's way a lot. These guys had multiple touchdown games on the season, and when it's 3rd and long, it's usually Kincaid first and then Vele. So if the Trojans can stop those two guys, they're in a really good position because when you get to that point, then you're getting down to guys who have their career high in receiving yards for a game isn't even over 60, I believe.
Okay. So I want to 2 questions before I let you go because I know you got to run. Biggest reason for optimism and biggest concern going into this game against the Trojans?
So biggest reason for optimism if you're Utah is that you're at home. Honestly, Rice-Eccles Stadium is a fantastic place to play. Look, the Trojans beat Utah at home in 2020, but COVID, no fans. So 2018 is the last time this Utah team lost a game at home. They're incredibly tough to beat at home. The Muss, all of the fans in there, it gets rocking, and it will be rocking as well for our 6:00 night game. It's already been sold out. It's been sold out for a very long time. So the biggest reason of optimism is this game's at home. And you get Tavion Thomas, who is coming back in the fold, as I talked about earlier. I think he's going to have another really big game. It's good to see him kind of getting going. And this is around the time last year that he really heated up. And I mean, he set records last year. He set a single season Utah touchdown record, and that was with not a lot of production early on in the season. He already had more touchdowns at this point in this season than he did at this point in last season. And as I mentioned, last year was the year he set the record. So I think this is a game where Tavion could really get going. And Cam Rising is playing really good football as well. Plus, you still got a guy like Clark Phillips, who's one of the better corners in the nation. So still a good secondary. So lots of reason for optimism if you're Utah, but reasons for concern, it's Lincoln Riley, it's Caleb Williams, it's Jordan Addison. It's a high-powered Trojans offense that can do it all. Been running the ball extremely effectively as well. Travis Dye has been outstanding, and this is a team that just got absolutely gashed by Charbonnet last week against UCLA. So I really think this is going to be a really good game, and I really could see the Trojans pulling this one out. I think a lot of people are looking at, I mean, Utah's favored, I believe, by 3 the last time I checked.
Yes, they are.
A lot of people think Utah's going to win. And I tend to think so as well. But I mean, if you're telling me UCLA comes in and even wins by 10 plus, I'm not too surprised. I mean, look at how good that team has been. And they're the kind of team as well that I just think is going to rise up to the occasion in this one. So I expect a great game. And as I mentioned, the biggest reason for concern is that's just some of the best talent you're going to see. I mean, and also because you're an NFL draft guy as well, you just said Jordan Addison versus Clark Phillips. I mean, there's going to be 20 plus scouts at this game. One of the biggest reasons is to see that matchup.
It's funny because he's a really good corner, and I do Jordan Addison. Everybody, people has all these different comparisons to him. He reminds me a little bit of Marvin Harris. I just feel like doesn't say a thing, just goes out there and performs at a high level. And I think the guy who is really kind of a pain in the neck for teams is going to be Super Mario. I mean, Mario Williams is just he had a bad game last week, dropped some balls, but he's tough in short area. His short area quickness has been off the charts. So we'll see what happens there. Should be a good game. We'll both will be have a keen eye on it on Saturday. So can you let everybody know where you are and everything like that before we go?
Just in terms of predictions, or?
Oh no, I'm just your Twitter handle and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, I appreciate it, Dwayne. So just head over Locked On Utes on Twitter as well as at JT Wistrchill. If you guys got messages, would love to interact with you as well as like I said, keep it at Locked On Utes as well this week. We got tons of fun game previews and stuff going on there. And like you said, Dwayne, appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, man. Take care, brother.